Welcome to tonight's webinar. It is Introduction to Fundraising Individual Donors. So let us begin. So first, a little bit about us. Fractured Atlas is a nonprofit tech company that works with artists and arts organizations in all different disciplines across the country. We are national. One of the things we do is fiscal sponsorship, which you'll probably have seen a lot about, and we'll go into a little bit about in this presentation as well. Liability insurance, we offer that through us, and we'll get into a little bit towards the end. Artfully, which is our ticketing service and tracking service, which we'll get into as well. And Space Finder, our marketplace for finding space. And we'll definitely touch on a few of those towards the end. So a little bit about our information. We have almost over 60,000 members. There's over 4,000 fiscally sponsored projects with us. We've raised about $1.39 million raised, almost 17,000 policies, 500,000 artists. So fairly a large artist service that we provide out nationally. And we are here to help. I want to say it's a pleasure to virtually meet you all, and we're glad you're taking these steps to advance your sponsored project with us. We at the Fractured Atlas Programs team are a lean staff of 11. We are all artists as well, here to assist you. So when you give us a call or shoot us an email, you'd be working with any one of us at any given time, depending on the nature of your inquiry. So yes, a lean staff of 11 helps you with your artist needs. So a little bit about myself. I am actually a theater artist. I also have a fiscally sponsored product. I actually have two fiscally sponsored projects now, working on a web series, which is also sponsored. So not only do I have a lot of insight into fundraising and things like that, but I'm on both sides of it, here as staff at Fractured Atlas and also as an artist who fundraises through Fractured Atlas. So what we're going to get into in this presentation is one, welcome, hello. We're going to get into the benefits of individual giving. How do we engage donors? How do we cultivate these relationships? Channels for outreach to donors. How do we reach out to them? What are the ways, what are the avenues? Captivating donors. So how do we have them stay with us for a long time and create those lasting relationships? And then we'll go into some of Fractured Atlas' other services, and then we'll also take questions. So you are free to type questions within the text box, but and I will get to them as we go through, but there is a designated time for questions at the end. So if you do have to check out early, type the question in the box there, and I'll see if I can get to it before we get to the end. If not, feel free to shoot us an email at support@fracturedatlas.org if you have questions and do need to head out early before the question and answer section. And again, I want to say this is being recorded, so if you aren't able to jot down notes fast enough, you will get a link to this recording again so you can view it again and catch anything you may have missed. So let's jump right into it. So in this section, we're going to provide some of the facts of individual donations compared to other contributed revenue and the importance of benefits in individual giving. So when we're talking about individual donors, it's important to see why we work so hard to get individuals on board with our work. So here's a breakdown of the funds raised through Fractured Atlas Fiscal Sponsorship Program. Now, as you can see, more than 50% of the funding we receive from purposes of our fiscally sponsored projects comes from individual donors, while less than 40% comes from foundations, and less than 10% is coming from other sources. Now, this trend is also prevalent in major cultural institutions in the US, and it shows us that we should rely more on individuals to fund the majority of our budgets. And historically, donations from individuals account for over 2/3 of all donations. So you might be thinking, well, what about grants? Aren't they usually larger sums, and aren't they more reliable because they come from institutions? Well, that would be great if they were. But unfortunately, while grants take up 1/3 of our income, you can't really rely on them because they are very competitive and might not come through year after year. You might get it one year, you might get rejected the next. And statistically, grants are actually the most competitive type of support that exists, and they've been decreasing each year. So less and less funders are giving out grants, and if they are, they're giving out smaller amounts as years go by. So the best way to create a sustainable funding model is to build a donor base made up of many individuals rather than a few grants that may or may not come through the following year. And it's unrestricted funds. So those are funds you can take and use for any kind of project activity. Plus, many foundations actually consider individual donors to be the bread and butter of your work, and they want to see that you have a strong base when they review your proposals. So, engaging donors, how do we cultivate these relationships? Now, making a donor base is easier said than done, of course, and in this section, we'll be discussing positioning your project in a way that brings in interested followers and cultivates relationships. So, what do donors want? Donors might care about the audience you're serving or want to help you bring your service to that audience. Perhaps they want to help in some way, but they cannot give time, so they give money instead. Some might want status, and some might just want the tax deduction. The one thing that's important to mention, and I know it sounds crazy, but the most important thing is to remember when soliciting a donation, it's not about begging for money. Donors really want to become a part of the journey. So donors are, in a sense, connecting themselves as part of your work, even if their involvement is a monetary one. Your solicitation is an invitation of sorts for them to be a part of the work and the integral change that it makes. So they want to see that your work has value and impact, because in return, it means that them providing that donation and providing that support is also providing that value and impact for your community as well. So how do we engage our donors in a way that excites them about become a part of our work? First, know your donors. Know your constituents and their interests. Pay close attention to the type of audiences you attract and the followers who flock to your work. Be sure to know their habits and specifics of what parts of their work they may like the most. This gives you the beginning of how to engage them even further into your work. Now, we suggested administering surveys at your shows or an e-blast to kind of gauge the impact of your work on your participants. So one of the things you really want to do is you want to tell a compelling story so that your donors know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So which kind of takes me to the next. It's kind of that simple thing you learned in high school, the who, what, where, when, and hows of your work. And you're going to ask yourself these questions to be able to put together some great materials that allow you to clearly dictate to your donors what it is you do, which is number one, what? So what is it? Be clear, be concise about your genre of work. I know it sounds simple, but is it dance? Is it film? Is it theater, performance art, etc.? This part can be tough for artists, as the whole point of our work is not to be put in a box. But think of it as opening that box for your donors. They may not know the subtle nuances of the art form, but bring them in on the secret. Tell them what kind of box you are working around. In addition, what kind of problem or what kind of type of issue does your work address or seek to provide action for in your community? Which brings us to who. So after you establish what you do, be clear about who you do your work for and who you do your work with. So who are the key players in your work? Who makes up the community that benefits from the work? Be specific on the audiences that will actually be impacted, and examples of past impact is key as well. So if you've done this in the past and you say, you know, we've really helped youth ages 8 through 12 learn how to read better or anything like that, make sure you're conveying that as well. So next is where. Where does your work take place? Let donors know where the activities are conducted and exactly where you intend to make your impact, what locations you are invested in exposing your work to. And as you get to know your donors, you may find that some donors are very interested in funding projects in a specific region, and you can cater to that when you're soliciting. So next is how. How do you do it? How do you create the impact that you want to create? What steps do you take in order to reach the goals you have set out and get the desired outcomes for your work? How does your process of creation, production, or execution hope to yield the impact needed? Sometimes this manifests as a rubric or a pedagogy or a specific method that's used in your work. Be clear, specific, and concise. Your donor may not know the intricacies of a certain method or style, but again, let them in on that secret, and they'll get interested right away. So why? Why do you do this work? Detail the significance of the impact that you're trying to make. Now, this is very important in conveying the value of the work that you do. And many artists get scared of the word value because we tend to be pretty humble about our worth. And how do you put a value on something such as great as art? But here is a chance to let your donor know the reason your work is so impactful and instill urgency and a buy-in for the donor. Let them know by donating they are making this impact as well. And then some of the more simple steps, guide your donors through the actual donation process. It's important to be very clear about what you want from your donors and how they can give that to you. So you should give them explicit instructions for how to donate. Make sure your instructions are easy to understand and clearly define each step your donors need to take to make your donation the donation you've requested. Now, if you're a fiscally sponsored project, that can be pretty simple. You do have a donor landing page with Fractured Atlas, and you can link them straight to this page and let them see right there on the screen you see donate now. And then that is a clear way of letting your donor know this is where you go and this is how you can give. And then after that, they'll actually receive their tax receipt right away. And one of the things we like to say in that is offer your donors rewards in appreciation for their donations. Rewards can be shout outs on social media, their name listed on your website, credit within your work, such as in programs and film credits, or goods such as tickets to performances, admission to classes, pieces of artwork, and more. And the way you can do that is we provide an easy tool with giving levels on your site. So as you can see there, you can actually set these up on your donor landing page. And if you're doing crowdfunding, you have that option as well, which is what we'll get into a little bit. But this allows you to indicate different donation amounts and attribute varying rewards for each level. This can actually, at times, entice donors to give more when they see there's a level that they can choose. It also ensures that Fractured Atlas can give the proper tax receipt to your donors with the accurate tax deductible amount included. And then, of course, show appreciation. Write a personalized thank you to each donor immediately upon receiving the gift. It'll add that personal touch that shows your donors how important they are to you. And you know, we're not so much in the age of paper anymore, so emails also work, but sometimes it's nice to get a little card in the mail. So next in all that, now that we've figured out all the ways that we can clearly dictate to our donors what we do, how we do it, the impact, things like that. What are the ways we can reach out to our donors? And in this section, we'll go into the many avenues available to connecting with our constituents and building that relationship. So many people want that magic easy button to get a list of all the donors who will give to you just because. And I'm sad to say this magic list does not exist. Like many large and small organizations, it takes hard work, perseverance, and networking. So one of the big things we advise is develop an advisory committee that can help you to stay on top and do all of these things. They can help you write thank you notes. They can make calls to donors and have a group of people who can help for you to keep connected with your donors and things like that. A lot of times advisory board members will give themselves, or they know someone who would give. So they're very valuable in that sense. We also say start small with close friends and family. Now, we know it's tough. We don't all have that rich auntie or wealthy best friend, but when you're building a community and you have a following, that $5, $10, $20 that a friend can actually give lays down the foundation for your project's continued success. So even if they can only give $1, it shows that people are willing to get behind your work. So letter writing is a great way to start. It can be a very effective first step in a fundraising plan for individuals. Now, letters should emphasize just what we spoke about before, the who, what, where, when, and hows of your work. And be sure to do this in a condensed and concise way. So use clear and concise details when you're doing a letter writing. Try not to use flowery language. Now, you're looking to gain their support rather than fill them with the metaphors and jargon of your work. I like to use the peanut butter and jelly sandwich explanation technique. Now, imagine you're telling people how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich who have never heard of it. Tell them where you get the peanut butter and the jelly, what bread and where to get it. How do you spread the peanut butter? What utensils do you use, etc. Try not to explain the meaning of peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The end result is that you want to have a sandwich. So use the I and you, but mostly you. Remember, you're going to emphasize how this will benefit your donor. Using the word you will help to emphasize this fact so that your donors benefit from this is very clear. Base the appeal on benefits and not needs. Now, you don't want to come off as needy in your letter, so make sure to speak less about your needs and more about the benefit to not only your donors, but also your intended audience. You're ultimately doing this work for someone or a group of people, so talk about the benefit to them as well. And give them a reason to send money now. That same thing we're talking about, that urgency. They need to know that you need funds now, not in 6 months. Let them know that you need money by such and such date in order to make this particular initiative successful. And use online resources such as examples of amazing appeal letters online. Make sure to be specific about what you're asking for. Remember, anyone can give support by just patting you on the back and saying, yeah, I support you, that's great. But you want to be specific about requesting a donation so that your donors are aware of your intentions. And many times you want this to be towards the beginning of your letter. So you can do a great introductory section and say, this is why we need support to make these things happen. And again, it's also important to let them know that your ultimate goal isn't just to raise funds. Ultimately, you're trying to make art that will serve a greater audience. And raising funds is just a means to an end that will help you achieve your goals. Another great way to get the word out is e-blasts. And our service of Artfully actually links to MailChimp accounts to make sending appeals much easier and keeping track of that, which we'll get into a little bit later. And remember, if you are fiscally sponsored with Fractured Atlas, you'll need to have all of these fundraising materials be approved before you send them along to your donors. And you can send all of any text, any links to unpublished websites and anything like that, you can send it to support@fracturedatlas.org so that you can get those approved before sending them out. Another important thing to do when reaching out to donors is to keep accurate websites, donor landing page, and any front-facing content. This way, when your donors look into your work, they can be sure they are getting the most up-to-date and accurate information. I do see that we have a question here about rewards to potential donors. Yeah, so it depends on where you're trying to do this. If you're a fiscally sponsored project, if you're trying to get your donors to receive rewards, it would be through giving levels. This might be actually a question that's best suited by emailing us. We can cater specifically to what you need. It looks like you might be having issues setting up your giving levels. So I would suggest definitely sending us an email at support@fracturedatlas.org. So that we can get those giving levels set up for you. It is on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page, but it looks like you might be having issues accessing that. All right, so one of the other ways to actually engage with your donors is through social media. And it's one of the great ways because the studies have shown that 96% of millennials have joined a social network, and that's the fastest growing demographic in social media is people over 50. So considering the number of people using social media and the ease with which people can share information using social media, it can be one of the most important tools to use in your fundraising. Now, social media can be especially helpful when you're running a crowdfunding campaign, which we will get to in a minute. If you have a social media presence, your followers can actually help spread the word about your work. So that's one of the things we do suggest, developing consistent posting and updating your front-facing social media. So, which brings us to crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is one of the most popular sources of individual giving, as you see now. As you can see, there's many ways to crowdfund. There's many platforms. And if you are looking to give donors a tax deduction with your gift, there is only one platform that can do this, and that is with Fractured Atlas. So luckily, Fractured Atlas has its own crowdfunding platform in which all donations can be considered tax deductible for our fiscally sponsored projects. Now, crowdfunding campaigns are about crowdsourcing your art, getting the word out to as many people as possible to expand your reach and excite and motivate current and new donors about your work. Now, crowdfunding campaigns are best when you're fundraising for a specific activity or portion of your work. For example, a specific production or a gallery exhibit or a new album or a performance run. Now, you can set a goal, include images and videos, as well as rewards for your donors. Now, one of the big things is many people think there are random donors just scouring the internet looking for a campaign to donate to. Unfortunately, this is not the case. 99% of the time, donors are close friends, family, and acquaintances. But the work gets shared so often, and there are so many people getting the word out, that excites new donors to get involved. And crowdfunding is just one of those ways that you can get the word out about your work. Now, the best way to gain new donors and reach new followers is networking. Now, networking is more about than just like, oh, here's my business card, here's my business card. It's actually about asking your friends and family and acquaintances to share your work, possibly put you in touch with someone they know who might be interested in getting involved. Now, networking is big. You should show up to other functions and get involved in circles you may not have been before. And yeah, getting a business card that is clear and has contact information is key. But the key is getting people you know, the people you don't know that your friends and family may know or fellow artists know to get interested in your work. Because I know we're not all millionaires and sometimes our friends aren't either. But 6 degrees of separation, you may get in touch with someone who has the cash to spare. And use their preferred method of correspondence. If your donor does not correspond to emails, then I wouldn't email them. Likewise, if they don't return phone calls, try emailing them. Now, Artfully, as we spoke about before, is a way that you can help with this and track your donors, and we'll get into a little bit about that soon. And maybe if you've emailed someone a bunch of times, then maybe you should continue to try to call them for future contributions and provide updates about your work as well. So how else can you make sure you're getting the most out of your solicitations? Well, there's 3 major ways that you can maximize on your donations. First is monthly gifts. Monthly gifts are important for any fundraising campaign because they allow your donors to contribute less at one time, which allows them to give more over time. So let's look at a typical donor profile comparing monthly donors and one-time donors. So here, when someone goes in and they press donate now, they'll have the option here to say, I would like to give monthly. And they'll click that and they say, how much would you like to give today? And again, every month, $10. This is great for people who want to give larger amounts but can't give that large lump sum. And definitely communicate that to your donors as well, that this is an option for them, which benefits both of you in the long run. Next is non-cash donations. Now, donations don't always have to be made in cash. You can often eliminate your budget items by asking for a non-cash or in-kind gift. This is especially important if your donor cannot offer funds but has equipment or other materials to contribute. Remember that only tangible items are considered tax deductible according to the IRS. So Fractured Atlas cannot process donations that are things of service or anything like that. Okay, I just want to make sure everyone can still hear me there. Just I had a moment where that might have cut out. Okay, perfect. Just wanted to double check that. So yeah, fractionalized can accept non-cash donations, but they have to be tangible items that you can hold, of which the entire ownership is given over to the project. So next, one of the options that we have is matching gifts. So many companies will match an employee's donation to a charity. So make sure your donors are aware that fractionalists can accept these matching donations. The match is usually anywhere between at least a 1-to-1 match, but sometimes the company will even match the donation 2-to-1 or more. So have your donor check in with their HR or matching gift departments to see what protocol is necessary to submit for a matching gift. And I did this once in my campaign as well. I said, if you, in the bottom of my letter, I put, if you work for a company you know that matches donations, let me know. We can accept those as well. And I actually did receive a $400 donation because of it, which was great. Okay, so generally the process will start with your donors making a contribution for the matching gift. From there, they will need to report that donation to their employer. The employer will check with Fractured Atlas to confirm that we've received the original donation. And then a few months later, we'll get a check from the employer matching the original contribution. So it's super easy. Um, I have a question here. In addition to the Fractured Atlas fiscal sponsorship application, is a business plan required? No, a business plan is not required, which is why we offer these educational tools as well to help you make that great business plan and make the strides that are necessary for you to get your work off and running. So next, what makes donors keep coming back? In this section, we'll talk a little bit how donors are continuously engaged with you and how you can continue to make long-lasting relationships with these donors. First, you want to keep in constant contact. Okay, and constantly send out letters or calls or updates on your work. Make good on rewards. If you've offered anything to them in return, make sure that you've sent those things out. If you've shouted them out, if they're on your website, or if you offered a painting, make sure you send that to them. These are ways that show the donors that they're appreciated and that their donation really means a lot to you. And show your resiliency. So even if you didn't, for one, reach a fundraising goal, your donors are dedicated to your work and they want to know how you're doing. So let them know sometimes the road can be tough, but that you are resilient and you're still making the work happen. Keep them up to date on your activities. Invite them and make sure that they know that the use of your gift was used wisely and what it went towards. As I mentioned before, survey your donors. Ask them what they think of the communications you've sent. So maybe, you've been sending a bunch of e-blasts and they're like, we really don't like those. You can be able to cater your communication better or ask them, what was the impact that you saw that, touched you the most? And that way you can let them know how you're making more of that or cater to them in that way as well. Then show your appreciation even when they're not giving you funds. Send holiday greetings or have a small or low to no cost event to bring them together, a meetup at a bar, or an invitation to an open rehearsal. This lets them show they truly are a part of the community that you've built. Make sure that if they are digitally inclined, that they are following you on social media. So that make sure you have that consistent posting schedule and that they're receiving those and getting up-to-date information through social media about your work. Sending newsletters is one of the easiest and best ways to keep in touch with your donors. It's something that they know will come regularly and they'll be able to see updates more and more about what's going on and then continuously donate. I know for myself, my theater company sends an end of the year just newsletter to say, this year was a great year, we're looking forward to the next year. And even without specific goal in mind, we receive donations just from them receiving that newsletter and remembering, oh yes, I love you guys, here's some money. So as we mentioned throughout the presentation, Fractured Atlas's service of Artfully is a great way to keep track of your donors and works with fiscally sponsored projects. So you can track your donors and other fans in the same place. It's a great way to start understanding your audience, managing your segments, and organizing your communications. So this service syncs with your fiscally sponsored project, creating an individualized record for each donor. You can sell tickets to shows and events, take donations. The system then saves a record of when patrons have attended events and when they have donated to your work. This service can also link with MailChimp, allowing you to manage correspondence and keep up-to-date records for your supporters. So I highly suggest that if you are fiscally sponsored, also linking your fiscal sponsorship with Artfully, and then that way you can make better patron records and things like that. So one of the other programs that we offer is Space Finder. It's an online marketplace that matches renters with venues that meet their unique needs. So for artists, the process of finding workspace can be frustrating and inefficient. Meanwhile, venues have limited resources to spend finding new renters. So earned revenue is critical for creative venues, yet many rental spaces are tragically underutilized. Through Space Finder, Fractured Atlas is increasing visibility of renter options, helping artists find space they need, and helping venues promote and rent their spaces. Now, there are over 5,000 spaces listed and 554,000 searches for space every year. There are also 800,000 plus annual rental referrals to participating creative venues. So it's a great, great resource. And then there's insurance. Thanks to the combined purchasing power of Fractured Atlas's community and our members have access to high quality coverage for much lower rates than would otherwise be possible. More importantly, with one foot in the arts and another in the world of insurance, we've worked with some of the world's leading insurance companies to design a number of proprietary insurance programs that are specially tailored to meet your specific needs. We've even made this process quick and painless as possible. So you can log on, click into our insurance platform, and you can actually get a quote. Sometimes an instant quote, sometimes they will need to get back to you, but you can do that without being a member of Fractured Atlas. You can get that quote. And another service we actually provide is international artist visas. Letters for visas. So getting a visa to work as an artist in the United States is time-consuming and a frustrating process. Now, Fractured Atlas is considered a peer group and offers to review your O or P visa applications and provide a letter of consultation / no objection for the application. So whether you're submitting as an immigrant attorney, an employer or petitioner, or a visiting artist or group of an artist, we can provide this service for a fee of $200. We can help make this process quick, easy, inexpensive, and efficient. Relevant visa application documents can be submitted online through our website, but please note you do need to be a member at least the free community level in order to take advantage of this service. So before we jump into questions, I want to give credit where credit is due. These are the amazing artists and photographers and great people who have provided the images for this presentation. We want to thank them properly such. So as we go forward, any questions, feel free to type them either in the Q&A box or the chat box there. Okay, I see we have one here. How important or necessary is it to create a standalone website for the project, even if it's sponsored by Fractured Atlas? I actually think it's pretty important. We do have the donor landing page. It isn't as uniquely you as it could be. So it's really great. People want to see the many facets of your work. They want to be able to see pictures. They want to be able to see everything and be able to go to a place where they can get back to what you're doing and see that. So I would suggest getting something like a simple website. I know I just actually started a podcast and I figured it would be great to have somewhere where people can go on the internet and see what we're doing. And I just used Wix. They have like really great templates that you can use. So you're not actually, you don't have to be like a web designer. You can just use their template and input your own pictures and text. But yeah, I do highly suggest that. A lot of times people will start with Facebook. So they'll make a Facebook page, which allows people to get to your information that's uniquely yours. So you could start there. What do we need insurance for? That's a great question. A lot of times there are reasons that you would need to, one, insure your art in general. For instance, if you're like a visual artist and you have art pieces that could in any way get damaged in any place, you want to make sure that you have insurance for that. There's people. So if you have people who work for you or anything like that, you might need that volunteer accident insurance. There's also sometimes when you want to use a specific space, they actually require that you have an insurance policy that is up to something like $1 million like that or something like that. So we offer general liability insurance. So there's a lot of reasons why artists will need insurance, and it's one of those things that you actually as an artist just don't think about. And then when it happens, you're like, oh, this person got hurt on set. What do I do now? So it is something that we like to help provide for you in those moments so you're not caught out there like that. Yeah, any other questions? Kind of going back to that last question, it says, where do I describe the rewards to potential donors? That's actually a great question. And what you can do is you can actually, if you are fiscally sponsored, you can set up the giving levels. If you go into your My Fiscal sponsorship page, you'll see donations and you'll see giving levels. And when you click on that, it prompts you to actually create them. So you can say how much you want it to be. Let's say you're offering like a painting in exchange, you'll have to also include the non-gift amount. And that non-gift amount would be how much that painting is worth. So that's why we actually ask you to do giving levels if you are offering things, because we do need to make that proper tax receipt. But yeah, it's super easy, and then it shows up on your donor landing page for donors to give to as well. All right. If there aren't any other questions, these are the next webinars these are the webinars that we offer. You can actually see what webinars we have coming up if you go on to fracturedatlas.org and you go about the programs. You click fiscal sponsorship on the right hand side, you'll see what webinars you have coming up and you can sign up for them. Again, this was recorded, so we will in the next couple weeks send that out to you. We are closed next week for a mandatory training, so it won't be next week, but possibly the week after we'll be able to send out this recording. And again, if you have any more specific questions about your fiscally sponsored project or something you didn't quite get answered here and it might be more specific about what you do, go ahead and send us an email at support@fracturedatlas.org and we can get back to you with any questions you might have there. All right, well, thank you. Thank you for all that you do that make it possible for us to help you. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you at the next webinar. All right. Have a wonderful evening.